Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we talk about films that are underrated or underseen. I'm the host for this week, Josh Hallam, and I'm joined as ever by my wonderful co-host, Alice Oliver, whose turn it was to pick the film this week. So what did she pick? Well, she picked Fantastic Four from 2005. So let's see what we think. So we'll start talking about Fantastic Four in a minute, and I'm very excited for that. But I just want to take a quick moment to tell you about our Patreon page. If you're looking for a little bit of extra content from us or access to episodes a day early, as well as other things as well, head on over to patreon.com/justfilmsandthat. That's patreon.com/justfilmsandthat. The link to it will be in the episode description. Tiers start from £1 a month, and all tiers include early access to episodes and bonus extended episodes as well. So if you'd like to support us, click the link, and any support will, of course, be massively appreciated, won't it, Alice?
It will, yes. I am here too, guys, by the way. Yeah, just letting Josh do his thing. Oh, he's nailing it.
Well, now let's do your thing then, because it's your film this week.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
From 2005, is it?
Yes.
So tell the lovely people at home a little bit about what Fantastic Four is about, if they don't know, and why did you pick it? Is it underrated? Is it underseen?
So, it's a superhero film based on the Marvel comics. So a team of people go into space to test the effects of exposure of clouds of cosmic energy on biological samples.
Of course they do.
Obviously, this is everyday stuff, right? Things go terribly wrong, naturally, but they somehow survive. And when they get back on Earth, they soon discover that they have all developed superpowers. So we've got Ioan Gruffudd, Chris Evans, Jessica Alba, and Michael Chiklis, who are the Fantastic Four. And then Julian McMahon, who plays Victor Von Doom, who is also impacted and has superpowers as well. But then he becomes the villain of the story as he blames the others for the failure of the mission and seeks revenge.
He does say that as well.
He does pretty much, right? Yeah. Pretty much. Dr. Doom. So that is what the film is about. Why did I pick it? Well, I was aware, similar to the kind of reputation of Green Lantern, I thought that this film was not well liked. It was not well received critically. And then I went on over to IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, just to have a little look at what the scores were. And I thought, you know what? I remember watching this when I was a kid and thinking it was good and enjoying it and not really seeing anything wrong with it. So I thought it might be underrated. And that's why I picked it. Whether it is or isn't underrated, well, I may have more of a clear idea of that when we get to the end of this episode and we've had the conversation. So underrated is what I went for. It's not underseen. It did quite well financially when it came out. So just going for underrated. So you have seen this before, Josh, and the impression I get from you is that you've seen this quite a few times.
Yes, I have. I have seen this before, and I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction before we've even talked about the critical reception, before we've even got into the likes and dislikes.
All right, go on.
This is underrated.
Okay.
That's my prediction. Okay. That's what we're going to settle on, that this is underrated.
Well, I hope so. Because that is what the podcast is all about. And if it's not then I've messed up again.
No. So, I have seen it before. I saw this at the cinema. I have seen it since. I am a fan of the comic book characters. They're not one of my favourites, but I know them and stuff like that. So, and I have to say, I have quite a bit of affection for this film.
Was this not on your list then?
I think it was. I've just never quite got to it. Because I think both this and the sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, are underrated. Now, they're both flawed and they're very much riding on the coattails. It's around that time of when X-Men came out, and then after that, Spider-Man came out and was a huge hit. And so they went, well, let's make all the ones we've got the licenses for, guys. Yeah, and some of them, we well documented, are not good. Some of them are better than others, and all that sort of stuff. And I have a lot of affection for the films of that time, because you've got to bear in mind, kids at home, this is before the MCU. This is even before or around the same time as like Nolan's Batman. So this was before they realized that there was money to be made in joined up thinking and shared universes. And now there's millions of them in there. So this is before then. So we weren't as spoiled as we are now when this came out. And so it was quite, there's an element to, I remember thinking, it's just nice to see the characters.
Yeah, for sure.
And stuff like that. So I have a lot of affection for this film. So I have seen it before. And I am predicting that it will be underrated. So let's come back to you then, Alice. So you think it's underrated. So having watched it again then, what did you like about it?
So I did quite like the aesthetic of the whole thing. So it's very sci-fi. It's kind of like a little bit Star Trek meets Iron Man in places. And I thought that some of it just looked really great. I feel like some of the CGI for the time was quite good. Some of it was quite good. Don't get me wrong, it has dated now, and especially some of the stuff around Mr. Fantastic's stretching ability. That looked a bit dodgy. But I do think I was trying to take myself back to 2005 and be like, nah, actually, a lot of this is actually doing quite a lot, considering that it just was nowhere near as advanced as it is today.
I think so.
So I get, props for that, for sure. I think the Thing or Thing. So is he Thing or is he the Thing?
The Thing. He's the Thing.
He is the Thing.
I think he's the Thing, yeah.
So the Thing.
The is very important.
The Thing, yes.
Yeah.
So he looks fantastic, I thought. And from what I can find, it does sound like the whole costume was prosthetics and that Michael Chiklis had to sit and then get these prosthetic bits of rock placed onto him on what sounded like just agonizing hours and hours in makeup. And I'm so pleased that they went to the trouble of actually doing that instead of trying to CGI him and his look. And I think that would have been such a huge mistake because the way that it is at the moment, I do think it's really effective. It's got like a great texture to it and it's so instrumental in bringing that character to life. So I really appreciated the level of effort that had gone into that. I think there are some good moments of comedy in this as well, and it does keep it nice and light. These were mostly from Chris Evans' character, so Johnny Storm or the Human Torch, but there was one moment that actually made me laugh out loud that I really enjoyed. So it's when Victor Von Doom, he's about to propose to Susan Storm, or he looks like he's about to propose to her. They've got a bit of a sort of interesting dynamic and relationship going on. So that's Jessica Alba's character. And he says something like, I've been waiting so long to say these 4 little words. And then Mr. Fantastic runs in and he says, the clouds are accelerating. And I was like, that's funny. Really obvious joke, really simple humor, but it just really got me. So I enjoyed that because it's like that fun awkwardness and interrupting of what's meant to be, a romantic and deep moment.
Proposing
they're in space
to someone
together.
in space.
Exactly. Like what? Like how much more romantic could you get? So that was quite
Than space.
And in space, exactly.
Is space romantic, Alice?
Of course it is. It's quiet. It's dark. But there's like stars and stuff.
Your tick list for romantic is quiet and dark.
Mate, pal, what you say like that?
Caves. So romantic.
Do you not think space is romantic? Like the moon and stuff.
Is space romantic?
The moon's romantic, right?
It's not.
I don't know. I always thought
if you took
romantic.
someone up there, there's a chance you spent a lot of money.
There's that. That. We like that.
Suppose, Anyway, so you're getting all romantic over space because it's dark and cold and.
Yeah, it sounds perfect to me, man. I love it. Absolutely love it. Touching on performance and cast now. So obviously I've mentioned before that I am a big fan of Chris Evans anyway. And I do think he's doing his best in this, considering that the script isn't the best or the strongest, which we will discuss a little bit more later, but he is fun, he's being cool, he's sexy, and he's just really enjoyable to watch. And I really like Julian McMahon's character, Victor Von Doom. So he did a great job with like his facial expressions and his eyes. He looked utterly menacing throughout the whole film. And then I really liked it when he became Dr. Doom and then he put on that creepy metal mask thing. Really cool, really effective. Love the aesthetic of that as well. And then so his helper fella, his like assistant guy who's called Leonard, is an actor called Hamish Linklater, right?
Yeah.
Who I absolutely love. And I've not seen him in much, but for me, he is one of the most underrated actors out there. So he's in Legion, which is also a Marvel thing. And then obviously Chris Evans then becomes Captain America, which is also a Marvel thing. So it's like this interesting kind of little incestuous pool of people just moving around doing
funny,
all the Marvel stuff.
Because I noticed Hamish Linklater was in this as well, and the only thing I've seen him in was that he did a series on Netflix, and I can't remember what it was called, but he played a priest.
Was it called Midnight Mass?
That's it.
Because that was amazing. Yeah, I loved it. He was the best thing about that show.
I didn't watch it. It was one of those things my other half was watching, and I saw bits of it whilst I was just sitting on my laptop or working or whatever. But it's funny because I remember when Chris Evans was cast as Captain America, there was a bit of a thing was like, well, he's the Human Torch. You can't be both. Can't be both. It's funny if you look how far we've come now. You know, these films aren't part of the MCU or anything like that. But it's like that idea of he can't play one character; he's played another.
I know.
When
Yeah, it's like, what's he going to do? Act?
Yeah,
what's he going to do? Be an actor?
Him and Ryan Reynolds, Chris Evans and Ryan Reynolds, have played about 10 comic book characters between them.
Sure, go for it, man.
Because Chris Evans is in this, The Losers, Captain America. He's in one called but it's a comic book. That's what I mean. They play comic book characters.
Got you.
He's in this, The Losers. Obviously, he's Captain America. There's one called Push. I think there's another. Oh, he's in Scott Pilgrim. Which is a comic book. Then Ryan Reynolds is obviously Deadpool. He's been in. He's been Green Lantern. He's been in R.I.P.D. All these comic book things. It's like between them, they've got like a monopoly on comic book characters. But I do remember it being like, well, it can't be Chris Evans. He's already been one. Like you only get one.
You only get one.
And then a few years later, you got Ben Affleck playing Batman when he's already been Daredevil and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, sorry, as you were saying.
So those were the key things for me, really. So a lot to do with the aesthetic and a lot to do with some of the performances and some of the comedic moments as well. So what about you, Josh? Obviously, this is going to be your first time watching this with that critical eye. What were some of the things that really stood out for you?
It's probably my first time watching it for a good number of years, to be honest with you. It's probably must be over 5 years since I've watched it. Look, so overall, there is yet to be an adaptation of the Fantastic Four, which has been as good as it could be in terms of the source material. A lot of people say the best adaptation of Fantastic Four is The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Because it's so similar. But anyway, for me, it's not a bad attempt at a Fantastic Four adaptation. They're not my favourite comic book characters, like I've already said, but I really don't mind this. And I think it's a lot of that, like you've already said, we'll touch on the script, but a lot of that is down to what you said there, the casting. I think the casting's spot on. I think all of them, particularly the four of them, the Fantastic Four, so Ewan Grufford, Jessica Alba, Michael Chiklis, and Chris Evans, particularly, I think they're all good in it, but I do want to particularly say I think that they absolutely nailed the Thing, like you've already touched on there. Yeah, I think if they turn around now when we're bringing him back, I'll be like, yeah, fair enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fair play to him for sitting through that. I know they've paid loads of money and all that sort of stuff. And would I take 10 million quid to spend 5 hours a day in prosthetics? Yes, of course I would, or whatever. But still doesn't mean he didn't do it. I think he does a good job. Because yes, there's prosthetics there, but he gets the voice right, he gets the posture right, he gets the overall aesthetic of what Ben Grimm feels like, and I think he's it's going to be a hard job to follow. There is obviously the 2015 Fantastic Four, which was pretty abysmal if you've seen it, but a lot of it
abysmal.
Whilst none of them have particularly nailed it's funny with the Fantastic Four because whilst none of them have nailed it absolutely, I don't think there's much issues with the casting of Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, The Thing, and Johnny Storm, right? I think they're all pretty good in all adaptations so far. So I particularly like what they do with The Thing. I think they really nail Sue and Johnny being like that sibling rivalry. I think that's something that comes into it quite well. I think they give Sue quite a lot to do. My memory of this was that Sue doesn't get loads to do. She's just there to be sort of, I guess, not a damsel in distress because she herself has powers, but I remember, and there is an issue with Sue's character, which we'll come back to, but I remember my overall takeaway was they put Jessica Alba in it. They put her in not the best blonde wig and contacts and had an excuse to get her naked a few times, which we'll come back to because that definitely does happen and it's definitely an issue. But actually, she does feel like the emotional heart of the four of them. Because she's always the one trying to push them forward and trying to keep it all together. Like you said, the effects haven't aged badly. There is some stuff where it looks like a bit of a shit video game, but overall, I think the Human Torch looks good. The effects of Mr. Fantastic stretching, some of it looks a bit bad, but overall, it looks pretty good. So I enjoyed that, and then that leads into, I quite like its overall comic bookiness. There's no better way to put it, I suppose, aesthetic, like you said, but. I think this is a pretty bold take on the source material because this is around the time when you got to remember again for those at home who did listen, guys, we had it bad. Comic book fans of I'm lucky because I've now got the MCU, and you think of like people who like comic books way back in the day when all they had was like Superman or in the 70s and Batman in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. But this is around the time when a lot of comic book stuff was, well, let's just put them in motorcycle stuff. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil, motorcycle stuff. X-Men, motorcycle stuff. There was a lot of, well, we can't use the costumes. Apart from Spider-Man, there's a lot of, well, we can't use the comic book costumes because they look stupid. But in this, they go for it. They absolutely, they go for the thing in makeup. They don't use any CGI, like you say. They go for the blue costumes and they go for all the stuff like that. So I thought it was really good. The Baxter building looks really good overall as a comic book film. I think that this looks pretty good. Like in terms of like it's I suppose it's quite colourful, isn't it? Like compared to X-Men or even Spider-Man in some instances, that still has that realistic grey wash to it. Whereas in this, it is quite colourful. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I love the costumes. I
Yeah, I
love
do.
their costumes with the number 4 on it. I think they look great. And yeah, and like you say about the Baxter, is it the Baxter? What is it?
The Baxter building. Yeah.
Yeah, that for me, that was like, that reminded me a lot of like Iron Man's sort of thing. His his whatever it is, his workshop. Whatever it is.
His headquarters.
His headquarters. That's it. His workshop. Bloody hell. What's he doing? Making birdhouses.
His workshop.
I know, yeah.
His shed,
all the sort of like all the sort of gadgets and stuff around that. And I think for me that felt quite comic booky, and that's obviously like a thing because that's appeared, or it reminded me of Iron Man. So it's the aesthetic sort of drew you in and made you think of that, I think, and it made you think of those like comic book panels, and it just looked like a comic book film.
It does, and I remember, like you say, this wasn't that well received when it came out, but there are people who are like comic books who I do think like this film. I think it's quite. I don't know if it's a favorite with the fans, but I think there are people who think that it's a fairly decent attempt to the point where, and there's a spoiler now for Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, which did come out last year. Have you seen it? If I don't want to spoil it for you.
Yeah.
So there is a spoiler for that. If you've not seen it, it has been out for like 2 years or something now, but skip ahead for a minute. But in that film, John Krasinski turns up as Mr. Fantastic, right? And obviously that's not referencing any other Marvel stuff because he's not done it before, and there's not even talks of if he's going to do it again. A lot of people have said that obviously there's going to be a Marvel MCU Fantastic Four, so a lot of people have been fan casting it with the likes of John Krasinski playing him and Emily Blunt playing Sue Storm because they're married in real life and stuff like that. So a lot of his casting, I don't know if they might turn around now and say, he is Mr. Fantastic, but I believe a lot of that was down to just sort of fan service and just saying, you want to see John Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic. But I've also heard other people say, well, putting him in Doctor Strange didn't make any sense because he's not done it before. You could have just put Ewan Grufford in it.
You could. I mean, he's still knocking around, right? He's still knocking around.
It's not like he's not famous anymore. I mean, he's not as big a name as John Krasinski. But if you'd have done that, I think plenty of fans would have gone absolutely mental.
Would have lost their minds.
And I went mad for it in the cinema. I was like, Mr. Fantastic when it came on. But if it had been Ewan Grufford, like you could have gone, it's the one from when we were kids.
You'd have
you know
lost
what I mean?
your shit, wouldn't
It's
you?
not like, obviously, I'm sure some people would have gone, who's that? But it's not. The costume's what's recognisable. So you could have easily have had. Obviously, you might not be able to have Chris Evans in it because people would be like, "That's Captain America," but you could definitely have Mr. Fantastic or the other two in there. So yeah, I think it's really well cast, and as well, I think it's a well-paced blockbuster. It's not too heavy. It's fairly light. It is a bit formulaic, but as we've said before, formulas are formulas for a reason. So it is like that. It's a fairly decent, well-paced, bold, colourful comic book film. Okay, then, so we'll move on to anything that we dislike about Fantastic Four or anything that we change about Fantastic Four. Now, obviously, you picked this, Alice. I've waffled on and on there in the likes. So is there anything you didn't like about it? How did you feel? You've obviously picked it because it's underrated, but you've sort of hinted there that that there's issues from rewatching it. So what didn't you like about it?
So there were quite a few things, unfortunately, and I did find myself... I did enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to, and I did find a lot more issues than I thought I was going to as well. And I went into this like wanting to like it, right? Yeah. And wanting to have a good time. So the script, the dialogue, the characters' actions and motivations, all of it is just very basic. It's very simple and very easy to understand. And at times it kind of felt like it had been written for kids, so that there wasn't a great deal going on for the adults. It doesn't feel like terribly advanced or sophisticated in its storytelling, and I just never really became excited about anything in it. So I think Susan Storm's character, I think, is written really badly. But you made a few good points there in your likes, talking about kind of how she is the driving force, and she's trying to get them all to do things and like be motivated and all that. So I totally get that, but I didn't see that when I was watching it. So for me, she spends a lot of time on screen talking about either Reed or Victor. And a lot of the time, it just kind of feels like she is there to be looked at. So I haven't seen much of Jessica Alba in other things, so I'm not too sure of how good an actor she is, but her performance in this I did think was quite bad. But I can't figure out, obviously, if that's down to her or just down to the way that the character has been written and the script in general. But then beyond her as well, a lot of the conversations in this are then about her and whether she should be with Reed or be with Victor and how Reed would treat her better and all this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just didn't care. I just didn't care.
It does not pass the Bechdel test. I don't think this film does it. Anyway, what else? What else did you like? Because I've got issues with the script as well. But what else?
So this is really picking now. So there's a moment shortly after they had the accident in space, right? So we're back on Earth. We're in this medical facility. I think it's like Dr. Doom's own sort of like private medical facility thing. And Susan is still unconscious or she's asleep or something. And there's loads of flowers in her room, right? In her hospital room. And then Reed comes in and sees some orchids and says she's allergic to orchids to the nurse. And I was just like, surely the medical staff would know that. Surely they would know that. They got to know all your allergies, right?
Well, yeah.
So surely it's on some file somewhere. So like I just didn't believe that at all. And for me, it just kind of felt like this real shoehorned.
I've never noticed that before.
Well, because it felt like it was just sort of really shoehorned in there to kind of show like, oh, Reed knows her. Yeah. Oh, he knows so much about her. Oh, isn't that sweet that he's concerned about her orchid allergy or whatever? And I was just like, she might fucking died because of those orchids.
There's like a deleted scene where they're like, did she survive the space accident? Yeah, she survived the space accident, but someone brought some orchids in and she went into anaphylactic shock.
So that just kind of irritated me a little bit.
That's a really good point.
Moving on. So Deb, who is Ben's wife, right?
Oh,
so the way her character is handled is just so strange, I thought. So first of all, she leaves her house and comes out onto the streets of Brooklyn at nighttime in her night clothes because Ben has phoned her from outside, right? So that was really weird. And then she breaks up with him pretty quickly after he becomes the thing, but it seems like they've been together for a while. And from the way Ben speaks about her and what he says about her, they seem to be very much in love. And I don't think we saw any conversation or communication between the two of them where she asked, oh my God, what happened? Is it permanent? What does this mean for you, etc.? Like she just literally dumps him after he'd been talking her up for such a good portion of the film. So I would have liked a bit more around that. Like if you're going to show us the struggles that happen in a relationship when one person becomes a superhero, show me that. Don't just have a look at him one time and just be like, nah, fuck this. Not having it.
I'm not going out with a big rock guy.
Yeah, like you don't know what that means. You don't know what that means for him. You don't know if it is reversible. Turns out it was reversible because he stops being the thing for a little bit towards the end of the film, but then becomes the thing again. And I was just a bit like, what is this doing? What is the purpose of this? I just did not get it.
So that was something I'd never really noticed before because it's not really when I've watched it before, I've obviously never really watched it with that critical eye. But it's something I noticed, which is, like you've said, her character is handled really badly. She barely has any lines. She barely has any interaction with him. And all you see is essentially her leaving him because he's not, he doesn't look like him anymore. And then taking her engagement ring off and putting it on the bridge. And so I've got this down here as something I'd change. So I know sometimes we do dislikes or something I'd change, but this is what I'd change. So for me, this film is well paced. It wouldn't be bad if it gained 15 minutes somewhere, a bit of character exposition. And I think I really like that it gets to the accident really quickly. It's within the first 10, 15 minutes that they have the accident or something like that.
Yeah,
but
same.
I think for a bit more of emotional depth, for Ben, I think maybe show them together before he goes up. Maybe, that sort of thing. But for me, if I was going to change something, there has to be a reason, doesn't there, about why would she just leave him?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you say, will people have accidents and then get better? And his best friend seems to be the best scientist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you're going to stay with anyone who changed physically, it might be him. But for me, maybe something like their relationship was already suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And she said something to him like, you know, you're a bit too old to be going up into space and gallivanting around. Not gallivanting around. She's not a nana, but like you're a bit too. You know, I don't want you to go up into space because we're settling down and that's too risky. Let a younger man or someone else do it.
Yeah, I can't take this emotionally anymore.
Yeah.
I need you to decide between your space escapades
or
being with me and starting a family or whatever.
And that was the other thing, is maybe they're trying for kids.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So he comes back. I told you not to go up. Look what's happened to you, you dickhead. Now you're a big rock man. I've left you. But that would make far more sense than, oh, my partner's an orange rock man.
Yeah. And there's just nothing. There's
just no depth to it, is there?
They don't have a conversation.
No.
Like even just like 2 minutes of them just sat down and her expressing, you know, oh, I don't know if we can be together anymore because of, just let me list all the issues that would occur from you being a giant rock man. It's like, yeah, that's fair enough and I get it. But it's literally, there's none of that. It's literally like she sees him, screams, runs away, and then throws her engagement ring at him on the bridge. And it was just so... It's dressed up like it's meant to be this really poignant, really emotional moment. And I was like, well, I don't know this woman.
It's got no
and from what I've
heft to
seen
it, has
of
it?
her, not at all. And from what I've seen of her so far, she's not very likable. So why would I give a shit that any of this is happening? And I just wanted more. Give me more around it. Zhuzh it up a little bit. A bit more
You
flavor.
need to have a little bit of meat on the bone for that emotional. You know, it has no emotional impact.
No.
And I think
so I don't know her.
in the hands of a better writer or whatever, that or another draft of the script, whatever it might be, there has to be more emotional. Because the whole thing with the thing is, you know, he's the one who suffers. You know, his power comes with a sacrifice, whereas all the others just look like they looked anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So would you stay with Mr. Oliver who turned into a big rock man?
I mean, I'd give it a go. I'd at least talk to him about it first.
You'd have to like make some changes to the house and stuff.
Well, yeah, of course, but I wouldn't just look at him and go, nah, it's done. Like that could be really useful to have someone like that around. Like when it comes to like building work, you know, feeling protected, lifting stuff. Like if your car breaks down, I'll just carry it to the garage, you know. Really useful in so many ways. So no, it wouldn't just be a, oh, see you later, bye. It would be a, well, let's have a conversation, see what the issues are, can we make it work, give it a go, and there you go. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to see. Just finally, I don't think Dr. Doom's motivations were clear enough or severe enough. Like the stakes just don't feel high enough at all. And I would have liked a bit more character building and plot depth around him. And then also, why are they having a party on the boat at the end? What's that about?
This is like when we did Reign of Fire, isn't it? And they're having a party. Why having a party? Why are you having a party?
Who organised the party? I don't get it. They're all just on a boat. It was
such a thing at the time, wasn't it? Like, have they got a PA who was like, well, better organise a party because you saved the day.
Yeah.
Like they've got loads of like balloon people on retainers. Hi, yeah, I need the balloons to save Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
They've done it again. Yeah, they've saved the city again. Yeah, so
I was like, it started, and I was like, what? Like, why are we here? Like, what's the purpose? What's the reason for this? So that's it. I'll stop now. What about you, Josh? Anything else that you would change? I know we've covered quite a lot there and seem to have some similar thoughts about things.
Yeah,
but anything else that you disliked?
A lot of similar stuff. So the script is, you know, some of the dialogue and the character development is where it really falls down. It feels quite hacky and played out. You know, things like Victor is up against his own board. How many times have we seen the villains against the board, and the board's like, if you don't do this, you're out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the Green Goblin. It's just, you know, Batman Returns. How many have we seen? It's the bad guy against the board, and then he kills one of them because he's got his powers now or whatever. It's played out. Some of the script, like I say, when, you know, early on when they're having their accident, and there's some dialogue, it's like they put it into a computer or something when he goes to shut the blast shields and he locks Ben out. And she says, "You can't leave him out there. Watch me. You can't help him. I can try." And it's just it's like they've not even written it. They've just gone, say generic superhero dialogue. So the main issue for me in this film is Doom. Okay. So Doctor Doom, and again, I've got to sort of separate myself from the film and my fandom of the source material, because Doom is arguably one of the greatest comic book villains.
Oh.
Like he is up there with Thanos, the Joker,
right.
You know, the big ones, okay? And they've never got him right, again, because they've never got the Fantastic Four right. And you can guarantee whoever they cast in the MCU, and there's all sorts of rumors about who it's going to be, is going to have a hell of a job on their hands, because he's going to have to live up to so much, right? And I don't think it's an issue with Julian McMahon. I think he is working with what he's given, so I'm not having a go at his performance or anything like that. But he's just too arch. He's just too much of he's almost like a parody of a villain. You know, at the beginning, when he's introduced, he's just sitting in the dark. And he just does a lot of talking like a villain.
Yeah.
And you're why? You don't need to do that. So again, I'm not suggesting it's clearly the way it's been written and the way it's been directed, because he's just playing the whole thing like a stereotypical villain. This is almost, it's almost parody levels of villainy. So what's happening to him, the whole thing, all that doesn't really happen to him in the comics, I don't think. But the whole thing of he seems to be turning into a metal statue just doesn't really make any sense. And he never really explore what his powers are. All you know is that he seems to be this hotshot, you know, men want to be him, women want to be him, millionaire, playboy type character who is very precious about his looks. So he gets a little bit of a scar and he's all pissed off. But there's like you said, he has no motivation. There's there's sort of a hint that he's a bit pissed off at Reed because of Sue. He's pissed off at the board. He's just pissed off in general. What are his motives? You know, this is before we had. This is before it seemed to be necessary to have villains that are well-rounded with the whole point of a good villain is you've sort of got to see their plan and agree with it a little bit. I think for me, you know, you look at some of the stuff the Joker says in The Dark Knight and you think that what he's saying disturbingly makes sense in a pathological, realistic way. Or what Thanos says about halving the universe's population actually makes sense. Like in a sociological, psychopathic way, you can see why someone would form those ideas. Whereas in this, he's just bad. But why is he bad? What are his motivations? So I think that's a bit of a waste, and things like that. So yeah, that's the main issue. There's a couple of plot holes as well. Like for example, when they are taken into the facility after they've had their accident, they're in the Alps, right? Are they in the mountains?
Yeah, they must be because they go skiing. They could be in the Rocky Mountains, maybe in America, or like Aspen or somewhere.
Yeah, how does Ben get to New York? No one notices him. Like no one's like, "Oh my god, this big orange rock man."
Did he get on a plane as well? Yeah.
Does he get on a plane?
Air travel? Yeah.
Has he got ID? How has he got there? How has he got there, Alice?
That is a terrific question. But yeah, because they go skiing, don't they? The whole thing.
They go sexy skiing, and then they go sex skiing and all that. But yeah, but the main issue is the script, and it is mainly that development of Doom. I'm trying to separate it from it's a poor adaptation of the character to it is. So taking that aside, the fact that he's taking the background aside of the character, if this was just the villain, it's still shit. Because he's still just bad with no motivation.
Well, I am pleased that you've said that as well, because I did think for a moment that I'd maybe missed something.
No,
that I was like, oh shit, did I miss the scene where we got a bit of his like proper origin, of his?
Why is he bad? What is his motive? Yes, okay, it's fine that his motivation is more power, but why? What's his goal? Because his goal seems to be just nothing. So we will get on to talking about the critical reception in a moment. But first, Alice, I believe you're going to take us on a journey.
Yes, I am indeed, Josh. Strap yourself in, and you too, listeners, as we go down the rabbit hole for this segment that I'm going to call Alice Down the Rabbit Hole. So, For this edition of Alice Down the Rabbit Hole, we're going to take a look at the life and times of an actor whose character didn't even get a proper name in the Fantastic Four. That's right, it's the woman who plays the character credited as Sexy Nurse, Maria Menounos. Maria was born in Boston in the late 70s to Greek parents. Her career in the public eye started in 1995 with beauty pageants, where she had moderate success. She then moved to journalism when she started working for Channel 1 News, eventually making her way to Entertainment Tonight. It is believed that she landed the role at Channel 1 News after producing an independent fairy tale film in the Land of Merry Misfits, a 35mm feature she worked on with director Kevin Undergaro, then head writer for MTV's Singled Out. But the negative of the film was stolen before it was completed. But her work on the film proved to enough people what she was made of. Though her career moved on, she never forgot the film, and in 2005 personally funded its recovery and restoration, and it premiered at the 2007 Tribeca Film Festival. She has spent years moving between beauty pageants, film, television, presenting, radio, WWE, and doing charity work, achieving so much more across her career than simply being a sexy nurse. And that was Alice Down the Rabbit Hole.
Okay then, so moving on from sexy nurse to sexy critical reception, or not.
Very sexy.
Disappointingly flaccid critical reception, I am imagining.
Probably more accurate, yeah.
Yeah. It's a, let's just stop in and have a takeaway critical reception. Let's not. Let's...
That sort of vibe.
Let's leave it critical reception. Anyway, so I haven't seen the critical reception. Now I know this didn't do well.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is how bad, right?
Indeed, yes.
So I think the audience are going to be fairly kind to this. I'm not talking sky high, but I think we're probably talking 6s.
Okay.
And I think we're going to be talking the 4s and the 5s to the critics. So I'm going to average that out as a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
For me, I think it's not a masterpiece. I have a lot of affection for it, but even taking that affection aside, for me, it's a solid 6.5.
Okay.
It's it's fine. What would you say it is before we do the
maybe like a 5.5.
Oh, really? You go that low?
Yeah, I'm probably dropping down a bit lower, and even that might be like a tiny bit generous.
Yeah.
Just there was a lot wrong with it, and you know what's annoying about it as well? A lot wrong with it that could have been remedied.
Yeah.
Like just a few tweaks here and there with some of the script and some
not
of the way
calling
the
a
characters.
character sexy nurse.
Yeah, that as well. That's in it. But we wouldn't have got the amazing Down the Rabbit Hole that we just got if it weren't for that. So, silver linings.
So we've got, 6.5 from me, 5.5 from you. So lay it on me then. How are the scores? And let's see how the average comes out.
Okay, so over on IMDb, it gets 5.7 out of 10.
Okay.
And then over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 45%. And then the critics, and the reason that I picked it for this podcast about underrated films, gave it 28%.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's low, isn't it?
So that averages out at 43, just above 43 or 4.3 out of 10. I mean, that's underrated,
quite
right?
Low. That is quite low. Is it that bad?
It's not that bad.
I don't think it is quite that bad. It's not as good as I'd hoped or was expecting. But there is stuff in there. There's good stuff in there.
If you paid to see this in the cinema, would you be annoyed that you'd paid for it?
I don't think so, because it is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
For all its flaws,
it's not offensively shit, is it?
No, and I reckon visually, because I quite liked a lot of the sci-fi aesthetic and stuff anyway, and the space stuff, because space is so romantic. I loved it.
It's dark and cold and romantic.
It's dark and cold, and that's what I'm into. So I think seeing that on the big screen would actually be really entertaining and probably would have quite a lot of value. Yeah. So what do you reckon? Oh, I'll just tell you what the critics' consensus was as well. So, marred by goofy attempts at wit, subpar acting, and bland storytelling, Fantastic Four is a mediocre attempt to bring Marvel's oldest hero team to the big screen. And they're not totally wrong with that, I don't think.
But is that, those comments for me don't reflect, what was it, 28 was that?
28%.
So what they're saying doesn't reflect that. What they're saying is right. Like, it bit of wasted potential. Like we've said, I think they probably could have made a better deal out of a good cast, and the script is a bit chonky, but it's not 28% bad, and it's not 43% bad, which is what we're looking at there. So for me, I'm saying underrated.
All right, go on. I will jump in with you on this one, Josh. I reckon Fantastic Four, the 2005 version, underrated. Well, there we go then. Fantastic Four. Turns out it is underrated. There you go, Josh. I'm so pleased that you had just such great points about that, and you clearly got a lot of love for the source material. So I think that was a really good choice by me, and I'm going to pat myself on the back for
you deserve
for
a romantic night in a cold, dark place.
Yeah. Well, there we go, listeners. Let us know what you think about Fantastic Four. But in the meantime, Josh, do tell us, what are we going to be watching for next week?
Well, I had a film picked.
Okay, good.
And then this got me thinking, and we've never done this before, right? This is going to be a first, but I am going to pick off the back of this.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. So
we're gonna,
so I'm going to pick the second one, and we'll do them back to back. Fantastic Four, then Fantastic Four. So listen, if they're not a fan of these films, our fucking listeners are going to go off a cliff.
There you go. There you go.
It just made me go, I'm going to pick the second one.
Absolutely.
It's like,
I think that's a terrific idea, and it's going to be so interesting to be able to watch them both like so close together, analyze them so close together, and really kind of see the evolution of these characters of this film. Oh, I think that's a brilliant idea. Yeah. I love that. I love it. Okay, amazing.
So in that case, join us next week. We're going to be talking about, in a first, we're going to be doing 1 to 2, first film to sequel. We're going to be doing Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer from 2007. So give it a watch. If you've not seen it, give it a watch, and you can do a follow along and all that sort of stuff. So that's next week. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you just search for Just Films and That, give us a follow. We're always putting content out there, as well as links to the episodes and all that stuff. We are also on the television, which is where Alice first saw the Fantastic Four, aren't we, Alice?
Oh, yes, indeed, we are. We are on the local TV network every Friday from 6 p.m. So if you live in Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, or Liverpool, or the northeast of England, you can find us on Channel 7 on Freeview. Or if you live in North Wales or South Wales, you can find us on Channel 8 on Freeview. I'm also uploading all the episodes onto Dailymotion, so if you head on over there and type in Just Films and That, you'll be able to see exactly what we're up to. But otherwise, that's every Friday from 6 p.m. on your local TV network.
Yes, lots of ways to see us, hear us, follow us, and all that. And all that remains to be said is we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for listening. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio!
Bye!